I'm Sarah Richardson, former CIO and president of the 229 Executive Development Community. Welcome to Flourish, where we delve into captivating career origin stories and spark conversations that inspire, inform, and foster community. Join us as we explore the journeys that have shaped successful professionals and uncover the insights that can help you thrive in your career path. Thanks for joining us. Welcome back to Flourish, where today I am thrilled to welcome a longtime friend and an incredible thought leader, Dr. Donita Brown. Donita's journey has been remarkable, starting as an accountant, transitioning into healthcare, and now shaping the next generation as a professor at Lipscomb University with a doctorate in business. She has a deep understanding of the evolving workforce, the changing landscape of higher education, and what it takes to motivate and develop future leaders. She's also the author of 3 books, including her favorite, Wisdom from Others, 9 Life Lessons from My Dad, and has contributed to numerous research papers. Today, we're going to discuss generational shifts in motivation and leadership, the impact of declining college enrollment, and lessons from her career journey. From auditing telecom bills that were literally taller than her to building powerful collaborative teams. Donita, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. It's so nice to be here.
It's so great to be with you because we met at HCA over a decade ago and our lives have continued to intertwine. And I love that we get to talk about everything from generational shifts to how we're preparing the workforce for what's to come in healthcare, IT, and beyond.
Yes, there are a lot of fun generational shifts. And oftentimes we think about generational shifts as being, oh man, can you believe that next generation? But I think Gen Z and the Alpha Gen, they're going to do great things. And I'm excited to see what happens.
I am too. And you've observed distinct differences in how Generation X, Millennials, Gen Z, and now what we're calling Gen Alpha view achievement and work. Can you share what stands out to you the most about how, especially Gen Z, is approaching education and careers?
Yeah, I'll share. I'm a Gen X. And so my career was all based on how can I make the most money right now and do the best for my career. It was all about climbing the ladder and really just money focused. Not now, thank goodness. But I'll say that Gen Z is a breath of fresh air because that is not their focus. Now, that does give some interesting challenges that we can talk about, but they're focused by doing things that really support their values and also the greater good of society. And so it's nice to see the shift from very egocentric to I'm going to do what I need to do to get ahead to I want to do what is right for the whole of the world. And so it gives me hope to see that next generation. It does pose a few motivation challenges, such as how do you get them to work if they're not going to align with money?
You mentioned that Gen Z is more motivated by making their parents proud. Whereas
Right.
Gen X, that's us focused on our own independence, especially financially, and the ability to prove that we could do things on our own. How are you finding these motivations affecting how we lead and manage multi-generational teams?
So I think one of the downsides to most managers is they try to manage people the way that they want to be managed and what motivates them. So if I was a manager today and I didn't know anything about generational differences, I would probably just think everybody's motivated by title and prestige and money and getting things done. But if I have a team of people that are not like me, they're not Gen Zs, they might be millennials, maybe they're Gen Zs, or even maybe an intern that's Gen Alpha. I would really have to think about, okay, what motivates them? Thinking about that, it takes time. So I have a podcast called The Management Minute with Dr. Donita Brown. And one of the things that almost every single guest says is the power of listening. And so it's important for us to truly listen to those that are working for us and not listening with the lens of what we really want to hear so we can confirm our own thoughts and management techniques, but what really do they want? I've had 3 students in my office this morning. I teach business, and all 3 want to do better. So they want to achieve, and whether it's because they want to be able to go home and tell their parents or call their parents or text them and say, I'm doing really well in this class, or it's just that personal achievement, they still want to do well. And I think that's one of the disconnects that I hear is that, oh, Gen Z, they're lazy. They just don't want to do well. They want to do well. They're just not motivated by the same things that we are motivated by. They're motivated by truly figuring out what makes the world a better place or how they can make others proud, not necessarily themselves proud. So they also have a challenge of shifting that because we know we can't live life and do well as an employee if we're just always trying to make other people happy. So it is different. It takes a different type of listening, though, for today's manager.
Is it harder for managers today, and this could be of any generation, to truly pay attention and to be intentional with a person because there are constant distractions? And I will say that in a fully remote environment for many or hybrid environment, there's a lot of things that can distract you when you are quote unquote home or in front of a computer versus being present with the human in person. And so, how do we improve the ability to be focused and listening when there are distractions absolutely everywhere?
When I think we figure that, we almost can solve world hunger, right? Our attention is so fractured today because of devices. I think it first starts out with just being intentional. One of the things that I see, it's funny, I see in Gen Z two things. They're either hyper aware, phones can be such a distracting device, so they don't use them, like on the opposite end, like I'm not going to use it in class, I don't want to be distracted, or they're just almost addicted, like they're with it all the time. So I think that's a personal decision. You have to decide how you're going to use it. I think though, as us as leaders, when we show up, we just have to make the decision. Whether it's putting a phone if we're on a Zoom and it's easy to keep all the notifications up, it's just clearing our work environment to say, okay, I'm going to shut everything down. I'm going to put my phone so I can't see it. I'm going to turn my watch on, do not disturb. And it's really truly being there with the person. If you have ever truly been in a space with somebody and you are the only person that person is focused on and the only thing that they're thinking about in the time, it can almost be life changing. I remember an instance where that happened and I thought, this is truly remarkable. Like, how can I give that to other people? Because I left thinking this person actually not just heard what I was saying, but almost felt the same that I feel. And that's what Gen Z wants. They want to know that they are important, they are valued, and that they're doing good work. But distractions just distract all of us. I will share with this, and I think this is such an interesting thing with this whole back to work in the office trend that we're seeing now everywhere, government, corporate, all over the place. Gen Z is not interested in working from home. They want to be in person. Alpha is the same way. Unless they're have some different life circumstances at the most, the majority want to take in-person classes. They want to do in-person MBA programs and they want to work in person. They're not looking for internships where they work remote. And I think we're going to see that be an interesting trend. So where Sarah, you and I are Gen Xers and the millennials want to work from home, we're going to see a resurgence from the Gen Z like the boomers who are not interested in that remote work.
There's also a balance too that comes into play because you and I spent 12, 14 hours a day at work and
Right,
commuting back and forth and all the other parameters that came with
right.
that. And so there was a level of, yeah, I put in 25, 30 years of doing all of those things. It's a balance. I do love a hybrid environment.
Mhm.
And in our company, our hybrid is we're on site together a lot at events. And
Mhm.
so I'm not sure how generationally people would learn how to function effectively in these different dynamics unless they do have that face time. And so, as you see your students and realizing the major drivers for these generations, what advice do you have for leaders who are looking to create a fulfilling work environment
Mm.
for these people who want to be in the office? And maybe some of these managers haven't had the years in person that, say, you and I have.
Yeah. I think it's just realizing, and it goes back to that listing of what everybody wants. There are going to be some people, and as life changes for some of these Gen Zs and they get a little bit older and family demands may be more present, they may decide hybrid is the way to go. But I think for good managers, listen. And they don't just say everybody has to be in the office or everybody is remote, but they actually figure out where people work best. We're all made different. You may work great remotely. I may not. I might need that face to face interaction. So it's really taking the time to listen to figure out what is required.
You've also mentioned, and you've seen it firsthand, that lower birth rates on alternate education paths are reshaping higher education. What do you think the future holds for traditional four-year degrees and graduate and doctorate programs?
Yeah, this might be an unpopular comment from a college professor, but I don't think everybody needs a college degree. I think there are, and I see it a lot. So I teach a freshman intro to business class, And it's interesting. You see some students that are there, they're excited to be there. Then you see the other students, and it's a small subset here, but they were told they had to come to college. Not everybody needs a college degree. There are some people that would thrive and flourish at a trade school or in an apprenticeship program. There is what's called the demographic cliff, which is affecting the rates. The birth population just isn't what it was in previous generations. And so we're seeing two things in academia. One is because of the lower birth rate, there just simply are not the same people to come to college that was before. Second is Gen Z is realizing, and their parents are realizing, college just isn't for everybody. And so those two factors are affecting not just undergraduate rates, but also graduate school rates as well. Graduate schools across the country are at about, on average, half of the enrollment rate they were 5 years ago. So we'll see, though, sometimes in an economic downturn, graduate rates go up because people are out of a job and they think, okay, this is a great time to go get an MBA or an MHA, Master's of Health Administration. We'll see. I think time will tell. Probably by August, we'll know if that trend is going up or not. I think, though, for most academic institutions, we have to make a switch and go where the students are. There's a big resurgence right now, a big following on micro learning, like Duolingo. Duolingo's stock has done so well in the last 20 months. It's amazing how much it's increased. And it's because of capitalizing on our fractured attention, really, to do small little language lessons every day. It's a language company, but I think the first company that does a micro MBA or a micro MHA well will really be a market leader. Capitalize on how we like things today. Instagram shorts and reels and TikTok videos, they're all micro, super small. And pair that with the learning. I think it's going to be interesting to see if that pops the numbers back up.
You talk about the way to do micro learning and universities staying relevant, attracting students where maybe cost is a factor, either
Mm-hmm.
economic employment uncertainty and alternative paths becoming more attractive. What kind of parallel is there between the changing education frontier and how workplace learning and professional development can really thoughtfully come together?
Oh, yeah, I think that's great. I think no longer do we see people going for these 18-month certifications or long programs. I think the workplace has to understand what learning is. And it doesn't always have to be something official that somebody goes and gets sent out to. It could be capitalizing on, we have a whole wealth of knowledge in the baby boomer generation. You think about all those that are in the baby boomer population now that are feeling the push of I need to retire, but maybe they don't want to. Maybe they just love what they're doing. I think there's a great opportunity now to pair younger employees up, Gen Zs, alphas, with baby boomers to learn from them in less formal situations. You think about not just the healthcare knowledge that is out there, but just the life knowledge that is out there. One thing that we see a lot is that generations side by side don't necessarily like each other. So millennials might not love working with Gen Xers didn't love working with millennials, but usually when you cross generations, like boomers love to work with millennials and love to work with Gen Zers, that little bit of time and gap helps. And I think there's a way to capitalize on it without the formalization.
And the level of responsibility when I even say today, and I do, I have mentees that are in their 20s, and I love spending time with them.
Yeah.
First of all, they keep me relevant because I realize that in my 50s, there's a lot of things I truly don't know about, and they teach me some of the lingo
Mhm.
and some of the other perspectives. But it's also the ability to share with them. I wish somebody had told me this stuff when I was 25 years old,
Yes.
only because they
Yes.
did. Like people just know to share certain aspects with you. You had to learn it the hard way or see it in action. And when now someone intentionally is sharing with you, hey, be aware of this, pay attention to this, be thoughtful about these conversations.
Yes.
We didn't have that as much. Sometimes you got it from different bosses and different leaders, but to your point, it wasn't as intentional as it can be today because now we have five and even six generations in a
Right.
workforce which is unparalleled. And we're also in that special time where, to your point, there's a demographic cliff, it will
Mhm.
change because
Mhm.
the boomers will age out, and then there's not a huge generation or a volume of generation behind that next wave.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the things that I see is that boomers haven't thought about what to retire to. Those that we know by some studies that have been done, those that retire to something, they're happier in their later years than those than retire from something. So if I've retired from a job and I don't retire to a hobby or to something else, life satisfaction goes down. And so it's good for you and I to be thinking about now, what are we going to retire to? But by giving those that are a little bit older in the workforce, and it doesn't even have to be older, people are retiring at our age, Sarah. But what are we going to go retire to? Is it to mentor people? Is it a younger generation? Is it to go teach? I have a lot of colleagues that will say, or colleagues from HCA say, I'd love to go teach college. Great. But there's other ways to teach and help our younger workforce and learn that knowledge.
And we all start somewhere. And I love that you got into healthcare auditing telecom bills. And I do the same, by the way. I started in a call center as well in my
Yeah.
career too. And so can you tell us about that experience and how it led to your first major breakthrough?
Yeah, so I got an accounting degree simply because my dad told me I should. And so I thought, okay, I'll get an accounting degree. And I also thought, okay, I'll never be poor. But if I know how to manage money, then I'll have this great wealth, right? That was my whole thinking of getting an accounting degree. Graduated, went to a startup company, they went defunct, and then got hired. And this is 6 months out of my undergrad work to literally audit telecom bills that were taller than I was. So this was at the time when you weren't getting like electronic billing. Like literally these invoices from telecom providers would come in boxes and I had spreadsheets set up and I had to go through and comb the contracts and see if we were being charged the right rate. It was super glamorous, right? Who wouldn't want to do that? All this paper every month. It was a contract position, so it wasn't like I was hired as an employee, hired as a contract position by HCA. And that was my job for about 9 months, literally typing in things into spreadsheets, checking the bills, found millions of dollars of errors. Now, not because companies were trying to pull one over on us. It was just complex in those days, and billing was just super hard. I landed, though, created a really great career because I just did the job that nobody else wanted to do. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't anything that at the end of the day I was like, wow, this really filled me up and it gave me hope. And at the time, it was a job that I needed. And I just thought I'm going to do the best job I can here. I have a saying that how you do anything is how you do everything. And so I just decided I was just going to do that job the best that it ever could be done. It was the kind of job, though, that it would have been easy just to have checked the box and said, I'm done. I've entered in all this. But by just doing a little bit more, I was able to find lots of money. And then I just spent my rest of my career at HCA just doing the work that nobody else wanted to do. Managed technical teams, did the admin work that they didn't want to do, made life easier for the engineers that worked for me, hopefully, and had a really great 20-year career at a large healthcare company. It was one of those things that I look back on and I think, wow, I had some really great opportunities, but it was because I spent time doing the work that wasn't glamorous, wasn't fun, but paid the bills and added value for the company.
It is such a powerful statement too. I often had to move for my career.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
moving is disruptive, but you move 4 or 5 times in 20 years because you take the roles that other people may have paused on and you're like, I'll go. And to your point, you and I
Mhm.
intersected in Nashville because your reputation was she gets stuff done. And managing field services, I was like, I need to know the people who get stuff done around here.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there you were. I'm building 4, if I agree.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there we were, and here we are years later. And to your point, taking roles that other people maybe aren't interested in, or the extra work, and any job worth doing is doing well, and what it can lead to. And I love that whole aspect about what you've done. And so when you are advising your students, or you are seeing young careerists, and they want to advance their careers through similar means, how receptive are they to realizing that sometimes you're going to do the jobs that people probably aren't even paying attention to, but it will matter in the long run?
Yeah, I think it's going back and connecting it to their values because they want to do work that's meaningful. And so, how can you help them see that job that I did may not have been meaningful at the time, but in the long run, it was very meaningful. And so, it's really helping my students look at jobs in a bigger space. One time I said, it was speaking for like a women in IT group. I said, I just said yes until I didn't have to say yes anymore. I just took those opportunities. And I think it's thinking of how can I serve the organization in a way that would benefit not just me from the experience, because doing that grunt work also gives you great experience, but it benefits the organization too. It's oftentimes taking that view of, okay, you're going to be doing this job, but think about what it does for the whole company or for the whole team. And it's really expanding the world.
You mentioned the alignment with values and with
Mm,
their mission. That's core in the ability to be a master negotiator as well. And
mm.
it's something you taught for over a decade. What's the biggest misconception people have about negotiation, and how can leaders apply negotiation skills in everyday business and even in their lives?
Oh, yeah. So I taught mutual gains negotiation as an adjunct here in Nashville for 10 years before I came to Lipscomb to work full time as a college professor. And teaching mutual gains negotiation really is the key when the relationship is important in negotiation. So it's not win lose. It's not what can I get over on Sarah so that I do better, but it's how can we both succeed and get what we want. And so if you think about that for life, how can we both benefit from whatever business deal that we're going to enter into? I'll give you a real world example. I'll give you a work one and I'll give you a personal one. I do some consulting work on the side, work for a company that helps small businesses. And so the first time I had a conversation with the business owner, she was actually hiring me to come and teach a negotiation class. And she told me after that, she was like, I was really nervous about negotiating with you, about teaching a negotiation class. You taught negotiation for 10 years, was a little worried that you were going to have this extraordinary fee. But what I did before I went into that negotiation was I thought, okay, what's important to me? What's important to her? What was important to me was to get to talk to people that I didn't have any interaction with. Didn't really, wasn't known in the small business space, known in the corporate America space, not known in the small business space. It's an interesting thing. What she was looking for was somebody that had the skills. So we both wanted something out of it. And so it's really thinking about what the other person wants. And if you'll take 5, 10 minutes before you go into the negotiation and think, okay, what does this other person want? What's valuable to them? And then know what's valuable to you and think, okay, what do I really want out of this? Is it an agreement? Is it a long-term partnership? What is it? And I'll say I got the rate I wanted, and I have been doing with that business with that company now for 2 or 3 years, and it's gotten me other work, which is exactly what I was hoping it would do. Here's the personal story. I have a husband. We've been married for 25 years. We've got 2 daughters and 2 dogs. Daughters are in teenagers. My husband and I both a few years ago were working a lot. And so I could see our kids' lives just slipping away. That goes so fast. You just turn around after you have kids and they're teenagers. So I said to my husband, let's go on a family vacation. Like I wanted to take a pretty big family vacation. He was working a lot. I was working a lot. We were both traveling. Everybody's story, right? It just seems like the working America's story. I would do things with the girls on the weekends. He would do things, but we really needed like a long week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks. And so I approached it in this way. I said, let's take the girls and see the pyramids in Egypt. And he said, Donita, we can't do that. Like Egypt, like that's a lot. Will we be safe? That's a lot of time. It's a lot of money. And so I anchored high, negotiation tactic, right? I said, okay, what would you like to do? And he said, man, I don't know. Why don't we go to take a driving trip and see Niagara Falls? I've always wanted to take you and the girls to see Niagara Falls. Easy. Now, if I'd have come in and said, hey, let's take a trip to the beach, it would have been too low, right? I set it pretty high. He came in and said, let's do this instead. If I'd have started low, he wouldn't have said, no, I'm really thinking let's go here. Most people fail in negotiations because they set their goals too low. If you set your goals high, you're more likely to get them, along with being likable. Likability correlates to getting what you want. in business, whether it's healthcare business, whether it's IT, but in business in general, if people like you, they're more apt to give you a better deal. And if you think about the people that you like, you're like, if they call you up and say, hey, would you do this? Of course, we're going to figure out how to work together or how to make this happy. It's that likability in negotiations is so.
What a powerful message. And I've often shared with people, if you put three options out there in a negotiation or conversation, make sure you can live three of them because the one that you don't want
Yes.
is the one that will get chosen. So what you're saying is put three out there that all are important potentially, but aim higher than maybe you even thought that you could have because you'll probably end up somewhere in the middle and you get that mutual gain in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I said the first goal of a negotiation is you like it, they can live with it, and it'll stand the test of time. So it has to be able to meet all three of those conditions to be a good negotiation outcome.
That is amazing. And you do your podcast too. You have 59 episodes and counting. It's called the
Yeah,
Management Minute with Dr. Donita Brown.
yeah.
You offer quick and impactful leadership insights all of the time. How do you ensure every episode delivers value in just a few minutes?
I have a really great podcast producer. His name is Davis Brown. And I would say he is the secret sauce to the podcast. So, first off, it's really great guest. I need to get you on to be a guest. It's one of the things, though, that I think has made my career successful is it's just showing up and doing it the same way every time. It's just the consistency. So we have great guests. We ask the same three questions every time, and it's short. Back to how do we stay concise in today's time when attention is so fractured? My podcasts are 15 minutes. So in 15 minutes, you get great wisdom from leaders that you can use every week. So when I first started this podcast, I sat down with the producer and I said, this is what I'm thinking of. And I was going to do a podcast 2 times a week. He said, first off, Donita, that's a lot. Why don't we start with once a week? And I said, okay. And I was going to do just a content, me talking for 15 minutes. And then one episode would be an interview with somebody every. And so it was going to alternate between the two. Listening to myself talk for 15 minutes was so boring. So we recorded a couple of them. And then Davis said, let's not do that. And there was real power in me listening to him. So he's probably 20 years younger than I am. I listened to what he had to say. He knows this space so much better than I do. And had I said, no, I've got a lot more world experience, I'm just going to do what I think would work well here, it would not have had over 60 guests. We've got several more recorded and they'll drop in a few weeks. But listening to the wisdom of those around us, I think, are so important. We have had some really great guests, and they're not all people that you would think of. Like I've had a gym owner, and I've had a couple of real estate agents and an insurance broker. And so it's really realizing that you don't have to be the CEO of a company to be wise. Everybody has got something to share that's beneficial for us.
Who's the guest that would be, oh my gosh, they were on the show?
So I had a guest on my podcast, and you'll just have to listen to him to figure out who it was, who foiled the biggest price fixing case in history. So he was an executive at a company. He went home one day and told his wife what all was going on. And she said, I'm going to call the FBI and I'm going to turn you in. His wife said this. And she said, you need to make a decision. Either you're going to turn yourself in and fix this, or I'm going to divorce you and you're going to go to jail. He was going to go to jail either way. He was probably the best guest, but also the most humble. I had to like literally draw it out of him. Can you share this? But that would be probably the, oh my goodness, I could not believe they were on my podcast. I've also had the chairman and CEO of Tractor Supply Company. I've had SVP of Alliance Bernstein. Gosh, I've had some really big guests. Those are the ones though that they have gave great advice, but it's also just the everyday person that you wouldn't necessarily know.
And you've written multiple books. I have to believe there's going to be a book from all the podcast nuggets as well. But the wisdom from others, the 9 lessons
Yeah.
from your dad, which is your favorite book that you've written. What inspired you to write it, and what is the biggest lesson from it?
Oh gosh. So my dad was a single dad, raised three girls on his own in the 80s. So at a time when that wasn't really happening. And at the time, when I was growing up, he would say these things, and probably everybody's parents were like, had these two, three, five things that they said, and you always rolled your eyes at it. Whatever, Dad, whatever, Mom, whatever, Dad. After I had my first daughter, Amelia, I was thinking about these and thinking, man, some of these things were just really profound. And she didn't sleep a lot when she was newborn. And so I kept this little notebook by her rocker in her room. And as I was rocking her to sleep, I would write down all the nuggets that I remembered my dad saying to us growing up. And for my 40th birthday, I told my husband, I said, I don't want a present. What I want is time to write this book. This is my idea. And so he gave it to me. And so being a executive in a company, two kids that were really busy, giving somebody the gift of time to actually write that and pursue the dream was pretty special. So probably the best story out of the book, and there's nine, was one that it took me almost probably 20 years to learn, which is there's always going to be somebody better than you. So I would get something at school or whatever, and maybe I didn't get exactly what I wanted. I can remember a time when I was playing in the marching band and had tried out for the top spot, and I didn't get it. And I came home wanting my dad to say, oh, that's so unfair. Like you should have gotten it. And he didn't. What he said to me was, and he said this many times in my life, there's always going to be somebody better than you. And I never liked that because you want to be the best. I always wanted to be the best. My dad probably knew from my ego I didn't need to be told I was the best, but he would say, there's always going to be somebody better than you. What I realized, and it wasn't until I had my own kids, was the point of that is not to try to be the best, but it's to go learn from the best. Like that's an opportunity when there's somebody better than you to go find them and learn from them. And I finally realized that was the second part of that story when my daughters were at a music competition. They both play bluegrass music and they were with kids that played better than they did. And I thought, that's it. When there are people that are better than you need to go find them and learn from them. And but boy, that took me 20 years, 20 years to learn that lesson. But there's a lot of really good lessons in that book, a short one, and I'll tell you this one. And for those that are listening in your audience that are in the Southeast like I am, you might like this one. But my mom left, my parents got divorced, and we always had somebody that brought a casserole to the house. I guess it was our little church family was going to take care of us, and they did. And we didn't always eat that casserole that came over from those little church ladies. But my dad told me, you always take the casserole. You always take the gift that somebody gives you. So whether that's advice at work that you're like, I don't really know that I need that advice because not all advice is good. You always can take it and say thank you, but always take the casserole. Always take that advice.
Always take the casserole, and to your point, always say thank you.
Yes. Thank
It's
you, ma'am.
pretty darn easy to just be
Yes, it
nice
is.
and say thank you.
Yes, and not and being nice and being likable will get you way farther in a negotiation than anything else.
Absolutely. I'm gonna negotiate some casseroles with you since
There you
I
go.
feel the same way about casseroles in general. What amazing just perspective and thank you. And the last question I want to make sure people have a chance to hear from you is that you are continuously learning, teaching, leading. What's a piece of advice that you would give to professionals looking to stay relevant and thriving today?
Find somebody that you can learn from. When I would take a new job in an organization, and until I got to Lipscomb, I moved around quite a bit, just always was professionally curious. I always found that person that had the wisdom. And there's always somebody there that sometimes they're a little cranky, but they always know. Like they always know what's worked, what hasn't. I would say find that person and go learn from them. I love to listen to This Week in Health IT. Like I listen to your podcast. I think that's a great way to stay relevant. There's so many good resources out there today. I'm a big proponent of education and of reading books. I think that reading books is a great way to stay relevant and it connects you to others because readers tend to find each other and share good recommendations and then have community. You can't do it alone. We can go fast alone or far together. So find a group that you can pour into, whether it be a tech group, women in IT, there's a lot of those around, but just find a community of people that you can be a part of.
Yeah, you can go fast on your own, but you need a lot of people to make a bigger impact. That's such a great
Yes.
reminder. And I'd also say, slow down. Remember to
Oh,
enjoy it. And that's that, hey, go back and tell the 25-year-old version, enjoy the moments you're in because they go by fast. And I remember someone saying to me one time, Donita, the only thing you will ever regret is how much time you did or did not spend on something that was important to you.
Ah,
And I'm like,
yes,
oh, at 25, I'm like, yeah, whatever. And now I'm like, dang, she was right.
yes. That's right. Yeah, it's good advice.
And you just take time to slow down a little bit and enjoy it a little bit more. I love how connected you are to the importance of the humanity aspect of what you do, and you get to see everybody all the time. So thank you for sharing your perspectives with us and for leading the next generation as a professor, as a parent, as a friend. It is really special to have been able to spend time with you today.
Thank you, Sarah. I can't wait to connect with all of your listeners and hopefully they'll hop on and listen to the Management Minute.
Oh, they absolutely will. And we'll promote it as well. So it's been an incredible conversation. I love how you bring deep research insights, real world experience to the table. And thank you for sharing your wisdom on generational leadership, higher education trends, and career growth strategies. To our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to check out Donita's books, follow her work, and let us know some of the biggest takeaways from today's discussion. Thanks for tuning into Flourish. That's all for now. Thanks for tuning into Flourish, where we unearth the hidden gems of career journeys, illuminating paths to success and fulfillment. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with your peers and leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We hope these stories catalyze inspiration within you, propelling you forward in your own career odyssey. Stay connected, stay curious, and keep flourishing.